I think you mentioned that Miami bass may either be dead or dying or potentially coming back. What is your ultimate view and feelings about the potential and the current situation with the music?
Well, now it depends what you mean Miami bass is. Because now there's a lot of interpretations of what Miami bass is. Are we talking about the booty stuff? Are we talking about the ghetto stuff where they aren't really saying any much lyrical content?
Whatever it
over
is that you do.
What we do is kind of like the steroid instrumental version.
Yeah.
We took like pieces of basically anyone you could think of that was doing Miami bass or even electro and sampled that stuff and just made it really concentrated. That was kind of our thing. We sped up the BPM a little bit. The kicks were sustained and they were hitting much harder than what they did back then, but that's just because they laid the foundation for us to pick up and keep building on top of it. We did more stuff that was more club-oriented, stuff that you could pull off in the club as opposed to, you know, I mean, you can listen to it at home, but it was more club music because it was sped up and had that energy to get people moving, had the familiar sounds and samples.
That's because we came up in that scene. You know, we came up in the club scene.
That's where we learned how to cater to different crowds and know what's going to get the crowd moving, what's going to clear the dance floor because there's no energy.
When you say club scene, I'm taking it and I'm interpreting it as, I mean, the mid '90s Floridian post-rave or even potentially rave scene. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that makes it unique though, when people use the term rave, it seems almost derogatory, but here's something that is really interesting is that in South Florida, it wasn't the same as the rest of the world. We had Miami bass, and it looked like what it looked like probably 10 years earlier, except a little more modified and maybe a little bit more drugs at that time. But they were dropping bass, like they were playing like straight 808 kick drums. They were bringing back all the records that were popular back then in a different context, a little bit more sped up, but it was the same thing. But the cool thing about it is we were jamming until 6 in the morning, 9 in the morning, 12
until noon
to the music.
3 a.m. until noon.
And people are fighting over who can get on the turntables or who can drop their records.
We'd all just be hanging out and just playing what we love to do.
Inspired off of the bass, like, and the bass came from anything. It could come from electro records that we were collecting that came from Europe, or it could be the old stuff that we're rehashing, or it could be old stuff mixed with new stuff. But it was, again, it goes back to that railroad track, which is the 808. You can mix anything on if you get that BPM.
As long as you're between 125 and 135, you can do whatever you want to do.
You said they were bringing back bass. By they, I'm assuming that means DJs of that era that preceded you, of the mid '90s. Of course, Baby Ann became titled the Queen of Bass. Do you guys have any opinions on Baby Ann or her relevance?
I respect a lot of what they did for the Florida break scene. DJ IC and Baby Ann. They did a lot. Their style is different from Miami bass though. It has kick and it has bass, but it's not raw. It was more of an Orlando, Northern Florida sound.
That Orlando breakbeat style.
It's not bad. It's not bad, in, you know, to differentiate it from bass, but really it wasn't the bass that, you know, it doesn't sound like Tricky D Take It to the Max. It doesn't sound like what we knew as bass. So what they did was more of a Florida break style. But people run crazy with the term bass and throw it all over the place.
Because it was left unattended. That shit is like, here you go.
Well, anything with an 808 drum is not bass, you know. It's just that's what they
again. It goes back to that language again. I mean, just because you're using an 808 doesn't make it Miami bass. It's what you're throwing on top of it and how you're delivering it. So, yeah, give them props what they did. They blew up. You know, they did their job. Mission accomplished. IC and Baby Ann are well known all over the world. But when it comes to Miami bass, they sample Miami bass records, but to us, that wasn't our inspiration. We weren't inspired from the Florida breaks. We were inspired by Miami bass. We were going to the ghetto, Overtown. We were going to Little Havana. We were going to little hood Goodwill stores just to find the records. And that's where you would find all the gems. You'd find Two Live Crew records. We would even drive up I-95 and look for record stores in the phone book. We would go to Larry's Records,
Blue Note Records.
We would go to different old records, specifically the Goodwills and the Salvation Armies and thrift stores. And that's
you have to be there for a couple hours, but you find some gold.
You always dig it.
And for like 25 cents or $1, you're walking out there with these gems that you know it's going to rock the club, but it had no value to that person that dropped it off there a few years.
It's crazy how that transcends those records.
We found everything in the thrift stores. We didn't pay for our records. Everything from Tricky D to Debonair Records to EFX stuff to
Mega Johns.
A lot of Two Live Crew. Everything that came out on that label you could find in all those thrift stores.
All that Nasty Mix stuff. Sir Mix-a-Lot stuff.
You know, what you're saying right now describes exactly the perfect point he made, which is it was left unattended. Do you think it's attended now?
it's
Well, I think I hear it little by little, mainstream.
You hear smidgens of it.
Coming back little by little, and then like cats like Pitbull, which is like cutting the barrier with that electronic world. I say it's any day now before we start hearing like Pitbull on some like bass tracks.
We are hearing it now, though.
And if
I mean,
we could have anything about it, we'll cater to that.
we are hearing it now, but it's not called Miami bass anymore. It's just
They
sold
package it as
rap
something
or
else.
hip hop. I mean, if you're listening, like we mentioned earlier, the Lil Wayne songs, those are Miami bass songs. The Millie and the 6'7", you take out the lyrics, and that's Miami bass.
I mean, and as far as like there's gonna be a tempo change, and I see it now with the dubstep, how everything is like halftime. We saw it with jungle and like early 90s hip hop, or like BPMs are on 90, 92 looking straight as you mix with jungle. Pretty much the same stuff. You can mix this Miami bass stuff with dubstep. And I'm starting to see that connection where you can see them, like, and you hear the dubstep coming out, and you see the electronic world using more MCs now, because even David Guetta and all these like house cats, electronic cats, have rappers on their tracks now. You know, next thing you're gonna hear, what you haven't heard, scratching on house. That's coming next, yo. Scratching on house, man. What's up? Said right here. Scratching on house. It's gotta happen.
Apparently, you're not a fan of Todd Terry, who's already did that.
Oh yeah,
back in the day.
Oh yeah, but he left it unattended.
He left it unattended. That's right. Would you guys say that you're even in part the attendance of Miami bass currently?
we try.
Try to.
We try to keep it going, but it's a lot of other people doing a lot of stuff that's watering it down. Is not being true to them, you know, at least as far as what we think is Miami bass, what we grew up with, you know.
I think it's just lack of knowledge and education, and people just jump into something and claim to do something. I mean, if you really like something and you're down for it, why not learn everything you can about
learn
it?
the roots and grow with the roots, you know.
Right.
Not just, jack somebody's sample collection or something and like put together a track and not know what those samples mean, because I've had that happen to me before with several people taking your samples. They use them, cool, but those samples don't have the same meaning to you that they had to me when I was cutting them out of the songs, to use and mix. So it's kind of more so understanding the evolution of music, at least for the last 30 years or 40 years, in order to understand what we're doing now.